Hi there, and welcome to the Alberta Update, a look at what is happening in your province. I'm your host, Bruce McAllister. Thank you for being with us today. Well, the province is introducing some new policies to make sure children are supported as they grow into adults to become the people that they want to be. Yesterday, Premier Smith releasing a video speaking to Albertans and the transgender community, and the Premier is standing by. We will have a conversation with her momentarily, but for context, we thought it was important to play you the message in its entirety. Here is a message from Premier Danielle Smith.
My fellow Albertans, today I wish to address a very sensitive issue involving our children and gender identity. This is not always an easy conversation to have. I strongly believe that we as a society must support and reach out with kindness and inclusion to those who identify as transgender and work to eliminate the discrimination they often experience in their lives. As Premier of this province, I want every Albertan that identifies as transgender to know I care deeply about you and I accept you as you are. As long as I lead this province, I will ensure you are supported and your rights are protected. In the case of children aged 17 and under who identify as transgender, I also want you to know that you are loved and supported as you work through your often changing emotions, feelings, and beliefs. As we all know, children and teenagers are in a constant state of biological, social, emotional, and sexual development and change. They're constantly learning about themselves, trying new things, dealing with biological changes, and trying to understand a wide range of new thoughts and feelings. It's a very complicated time. In my view, one of the greatest responsibilities we as parents, teachers, and community leaders have is to preserve for our children the right to grow and develop into mature adults so that they are better prepared to make the most impactful decisions affecting their lives. Decisions like choosing a career, a partner, raising children, their interaction with legal drugs like alcohol and cannabis, their sexual activities and preferences, and many other adult choices. It is my view that list of adult choices includes deciding whether or not to alter one's biological sex. Making permanent and irreversible decisions regarding one's biological sex while still a youth can severely limit that child's choices in the future. Prematurely encouraging or enabling children to alter their very biology or natural growth, no matter how well-intentioned and sincere, poses a risk to that child's future that I, as Premier, am not comfortable with permitting in our province. Similarly, the risks and unfair advantages that young women and girls are experiencing when competing with biologically stronger transgender females in sporting competitions have also grown too high. After much discussion, the Government Caucus and I have therefore decided to implement the following policies and guidelines as it relates to transgender minors and athletes, including additional supports to assist transgender adults to secure the healthcare they need and the counseling support for youth identifying as transgender to ensure they can successfully work their way through their complex feelings and emotions as they grow to adulthood. First, on the issue of gender reassignment treatments for minors. For minors aged 17 and under, top and bottom gender reassignment surgeries will not be permitted. For children aged 15 and under, puberty blockers and hormone therapies for the purpose of gender reassignment or affirmation will also not be permitted, with the exception of those who've already commenced their treatment at this time. Minors aged 16 and 17 will be permitted to commence hormone therapies for gender reassignment and affirmation purposes, so long as they are deemed mature enough to make these decisions and have parental, physician, and psychologist approval. For transgender adults, our government is currently working to attract one or more medical professionals to practice in Alberta who specialize in transgender surgery to ensure those individuals transitioning have access to an expert in Alberta to assist them with their extremely unique and complex medical needs, rather than going to Quebec, which is now the practice. We will also be building a private registry of medical professionals who specialize in this field to better support the lifelong healthcare needs of transgender Albertans, including access to needed hormones and surgery aftercare. When it comes to classroom instruction on subject matter involving gender identity, sexual orientation, or human sexuality, we will be requiring parental notification and an opt-in requirement for each instance a teacher intends to give formal instruction on these subjects. Furthermore, all third-party resource materials or presentations related to gender identity, sexual orientation, or human sexuality in our K-12 school system will need to be pre-approved by the Ministry of Education to ensure the materials are age-appropriate. For a minor, age 15 and under, the government will require parental notification and consent for a school to alter the name or pronouns of a child. For For 16 and 17-year-olds who choose to alter their name or pronouns, parents do not need to give consent, but they must be notified. We know that nearly all parents, even those who may disagree with the decision of their children, will love and care for their children no matter what choices they make. However, in the handful of rare situations where one or both of the parents reject or become abusive to a child who identifies as transgender, we have child protection laws that will be strictly enforced. The government is also designing a pilot project to provide appropriate counseling services to support parents and youth identifying as transgender to work through the unique challenges these families face. We encourage all teachers, parents, classmates, and youth volunteers to be on the watch for any instances of bullying of youth or children for any reason, so adults can assist with putting a stop to it the moment it is detected. Our government also needs to deal with the emerging issue of the unfair disadvantages that young women and girls are experiencing when competing with biologically stronger transgender female athletes in sporting competitions. I strongly believe that those who were born male but have transitioned to or identify as female are owed the opportunity to meaningfully participate in sport. However, there are obvious biological realities that give transgender female athletes a massive competitive advantage over women and girls. It is not beneficial for those women, including those who are transgender, for this divisive and sometimes dangerous situation to continue. That is why the Alberta government will work with sporting organizations active in our province to ensure that women and girls have the choice to compete in a women's-only division in athletic competitions and are not forced to compete against biologically stronger transgender female athletes. We will also work with those same sporting organizations to ensure transgender athletes are able to meaningfully participate in the sport of their choice through the expansion of co-ed or other gender-neutral divisions for athletic competitions. I understand how controversial and divisive discussions on topics of sexuality and gender can be, especially when those conversations involve children. I would therefore ask that as we work through implementing these policies, that we, as adults in this province, do all we can to depoliticize the discussion and focus on the well-being of the children involved, whether they are young people identifying as transgender or who find themselves attracted to those of the same sex, or simply trying to understand the complex and often changing emotions and feelings of being teenagers. They all need our unconditional love and support. And it's to those children and teens that I want to say just how much we love you and support you in becoming the person you want to be. You never have to feel alone or isolated. If you do, reach out to your parents, family members, teachers, a coach, or other trusted adults and ask for support. We, as the adults in your life, will be there for you to make sure you know just how amazing and precious you are. Thank you for listening.
All right, and the Premier joins us now to talk more about this. Premier, we know this is an extremely sensitive topic. It's an extremely important topic. Can you tell us more about what you've announced and why?
Well, it falls into three categories, but what are the main ones, of course, and the overriding principle is we want to preserve the choices that kids will make, and so that they don't make irreversible decisions before they're mature enough to understand the consequences of those decisions. And so there's a series of policies we've put forward on healthcare to make sure that kids know at what point they'll be able to get hormone therapy as well as top and bottom surgery, and then to have long-term support for those same individuals. I mean, when you make a decision like this, it requires ongoing care, not only mental health care, but also physical care. And so we're going to ensure that we have the appropriate number of medical professionals to ensure that those young people, as they grow into adults and then beyond, are taken care of. We also know that we want to make sure that the families are involved as these discussions unfold. And so it's part of the reason why we want to make sure that our education system is aligned with involving parents and making sure that the materials that are given in school are age appropriate. So that's another part. And then we also want to protect transgender athletes so they have the ability to do their sport in a co-ed environment while also protecting the biological females who are especially in certain sports, face potential harm if they're having to compete against biologically stronger transgender female athletes. So we want to be able to create a a women and girls only category, so that we can preserve the choices for everyone. So that's the package of proposals we put forward.
Well, your government's not the first to do it, as you well know. It's been done in many European countries, several U.S. states. I think we're now the third province to come forward with policies. I think one part of the announcement, Premier, that's especially important, and maybe it gets overlooked a little bit, is the additional access to healthcare services for Alberta's transgender community. That's very important.
I was very struck by this because, as you know, I've been in politics for some time, and so I've had transgender constituents before and spoken many times over the years about some of the challenges those who have transitioned faced. And I'm struck particularly by the story of Lois Cardinal, who felt rushed into getting bottom surgery, and then after her surgery, there just wasn't appropriate aftercare. And I thought we've got to be able to remedy that. So it's part of the reason why we're working on recruiting a doctor who can perform surgeries in Alberta. Right now, we send those who get transgender surgery to Quebec, so we can provide the ongoing care. The other, I'd also heard over the years, the difficulty finding a doctor who can specialize in transgender medicine, as well as the ongoing hormone replacement support and the consequences of that. That requires specialized medicine. So we want to be able to create a private registry of doctors so that we can more easily match the transgender patients with an appropriate care provider. And I think that's important. I think that that is something that I've heard over the years is necessary. And that's one of the reasons why we've added this to the package.
All right, listen, I'll ask you one more on this. I know it's a very important subject. You're also bringing in more social supports for children identifying as transgender and their families. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the province will be offering?
Yeah, this is a family journey, really. When a child makes the important decision that they want to do this transition, that's not something the family can be locked out of. The family is going to be their long-term support group, and these are hard conversations to have. There's no question. So we feel that by having additional support, so that families can be kept in the process, understanding the best way that they can support that transition and be able to support their child. I think that that's going to be the healthiest environment that we can provide here. There sadly are going to be some cases, we understand that, where families might not accept their child's choice. And if a child ever feels like they are at risk or could be harmed, we have child protection laws, and we're going to make sure that those children are protected as well. So we just want to make sure that the kids are able to explore and become who they want to be, and make sure that they're not prematurely making any decisions that are going to cut off their choices as adults. And so that's the reason why we put this group of 10 proposals forward.
Well, it seems incredibly reasonable. Listen, I know it's a sensitive topic. Thanks for speaking with us about it. Before I let you go, you're off next week. I think you're in Ottawa, Toronto, Washington. Who are you visiting? Who are you talking with? And what are we hoping to accomplish for Alberta?
Well, we have a big battle happening with Ottawa. It doesn't seem to matter how many court cases they lose, and they've lost several now. They lost in their Impact Assessment Act. They lost on plastics. They lost on the invocation of the Emergencies Act. They continue to act in a way that ignores the Constitution, ignores the division of powers, and it's having really serious consequences. We had a power grid near failure happen just a couple of weeks ago, and that, I think, demonstrates in very clear terms why we have to be maintaining control over our power grid, why we need to build more base load power, and why the Environment Minister, Stephen Guilbeault, should have nothing to say about it. So that's one thing that we'll be pushing back on. But we also know that there's some common ground that we can have. We know that investment in hydrogen and ammonia, geothermal, small modular nuclear, there are some things that I think we can work together on. So I'll be having those conversations. And we're also opening up our Ottawa office. It's come to a point now where we feel we need to have a permanent presence in Ottawa just to keep an eye on what those guys are up to. So I'll be opening the Ottawa office and doing an opening reception as well to tell people the reasons for it.
Excellent. James Carpenter will have his hands full. Any comment on Washington?
Oh, and also, going on to Toronto, where I'll be meeting with Premier Doug Ford. I've met with him many times, and I think we've got a lot of common cause. Speaking at the Albany Club, where, again, I'll be talking to Toronto and some of the financial sector there about why they should be supporting investment in Alberta. And then on to Washington, because we're seeing political change down there this year. One way or the other, there's going to be a reconfiguration in potentially the White House, but certainly in Congress. And we want to just be able to make that solid message that Alberta's here. We're here to help. We can provide energy security, we can provide energy affordability, and we can do that while having the very best environmental record and emissions reduction plan on the planet. So that's the message I want to sell because I think our American partners are very important to us, and I think they need to hear it.
You bet. Premier, always appreciate your time. Thank you.
My pleasure. See you.
In other news, improving access to healthcare is one of the biggest priorities for this government. And in addition to the ongoing consultation with healthcare workers, with parents, with families, and caregivers on the healthcare refocusing, the government is taking action to ensure Albertans can get more when and where they need it, more care. Shoppers Drug Mart is helping with this challenge, you may have heard this week, by providing access to care for common issues faster and without the long wait times. This will take the pressure, or some of the pressure, off of doctors' offices, hospitals, and emergency rooms, and accommodate people who might not have any other place to go.
Anyone feeling sick will be able to book an appointment or walk into the nearest clinic and get a consultation for care if needed. Increased accessibility will take tremendous pressure off of doctors' offices and emergency rooms of hospitals. And people who are under the weather won't have to travel far or spend so much time waiting or suffering to receive medical assistance. Plus, Albertans will have another option to get some care where there may be no other place to go. And this is a win for everyone, from patients to frontline healthcare workers, and it's a relief for our overburdened system. So I'd like to thank Jeff and the entire team at Shoppers, both for their investment and for their willingness to try a new approach in Alberta.
It's your welcoming and collaborative approach that has given us the confidence as a company to make a minimum capital investment of $77 million in this province since 2022 to expand our network of healthcare professionals and infrastructure to help address some of the growing demands on the public system today.
The threat of drought is very real right now in Alberta, with very unseasonably dry spring and summer, and of course lack of precipitation this winter. Many communities in the province are already worried about the impact this will have on the water supply this year. That is why Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, Rebecca Schulz, is doing something about it. She joins us today to discuss it. Good day, Minister.
Hi, Bruce.
Hey, safe to say, it's no secret, Alberta, very concerned with the dry conditions. There hasn't been a lot of snowpack, and of course we had a dry spring and summer. Tell us, Minister, how serious is the situation, and what actions are you taking to ensure that we're dealing with it?
Yeah, unfortunately, it is a pretty serious situation that we're seeing. Of course, we saw we were in a drought last year as well. And so compounding that, we're seeing El Nino this year. So this is especially challenging for some of those southern Alberta farmers and our agricultural producers that were already hit hard in past years. But we really have been trying to be proactive and take action on this, letting people know before the holidays that we wanted municipalities and irrigators to look at their water use, have a plan for conserving water to get ready for the water sharing agreement discussions that literally just kicked off today. Those are going to be important discussions so that we can do this in a collaborative way, not top down, and make sure that all of our water users have access to water. We've also struck a panel of leaders across Alberta to provide us with some advice. We had the first of what I think will be many town halls coming up this spring as well. But really what we're focusing on is finding ways that these water users can conserve water and make sure that all users have access to water, even though we're going to have a really dry spring, summer, and fall.
Well, certainly smart to be proactive, Minister, and I guess we can cross our fingers and hope for more moisture. Still lots of winter left. Hey, let's switch gears a bit. I understand Alberta is going to submit a formal response to Federal Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault's oil and gas production cap, and they're going to do that on February the 5th. Can you tell us about a bit about what Alberta intends to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, our submission is going to be very clear once again that we will just not tolerate the implementation of this policy here in Alberta. We will do everything as a government that we can to protect our exclusive constitutional jurisdiction when it comes to natural resources and our energy development. We are going to point out that their proposal is deeply flawed. They use bad data, they use bad modeling, they use assumptions that are just completely untrue. And we're also going to show how this oil and gas emissions cap would devastate our economy. I mean, we are expecting that there would be a loss of $1 trillion in value to Canada's GDP. So this isn't just going to impact Alberta and communities and First Nations and jobs here in Alberta. This will have a huge impact on Canada's economy. And I can tell you that Alberta will not be the only province telling the feds this. I understand also many companies and business organizations are going to be sharing that same message as well. So unfortunately, you know, what we've seen again from Minister Guilbeault and Prime Minister Trudeau is ideology. And, you know, we continue to see them just move forward and plow ahead, no matter how much opposition they've encountered. And, you know, if that's what we see when it comes to this oil and gas cap again, you know, they can rest assured that we will once again see them in court. And we're pretty optimistic about how that will go, given some of those decisions we've seen in the last couple of months.
Well, let's stay with Ottawa for one more question. Minister, we've been hearing reports that the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, is thinking about rebranding the carbon tax, like that'll somehow make it more palatable to Canadians. Have you heard about this? And what would your reaction be?
You know, just how out of touch can this federal government be? I mean, to get this feedback from Canadians right across our country about how affordability is a top concern, how everybody knows that the carbon tax is driving up the cost of everything from groceries to our bills in our own homes to the fuel that goes in our vehicles, you know, and then we have this federal government says, yeah, okay, we've heard your concerns. We're just going to rename this thing and you're going to like it a little bit more. Honestly, like this is just such an out of touch federal government. Their failed environmental plan is falling apart. I mean, really, the wheels are coming off, I think is how I described it before the holidays. And I don't think that a rebrand of a carbon tax is going to save them in the polls. So, you know, Canadians have seen what they're up to. They've seen costs going up, not going down. They know that this carbon tax is not having an impact on emissions at all. And I think we're going to see that when they go to vote next year.
You know, it's been an interesting week on the environmental file right across the country, municipal governments too. I want to ask you quickly about the stunning reversal of Calgary Council's decision on the single-use plastics ban. You've been on the Alberta Update with us several times talking about plastics. I know you're fighting similar federal laws in court. I'd like to know your opinion on what happened in Calgary this week.
Yeah, I mean, we have been fighting that federal legislation because, again, it was really getting in the way of the great things that provinces are actually trying to do when it comes to plastics, recycling, and driving our circular economy and petrochemical industry. You know, I think, again, we saw the federal court come out and say unreasonable, unconstitutional. We continue to see that federal government just move forward and plow ahead. I would say then, you know, what we saw in Calgary, we saw common sense prevail. I mean, I heard it from residents of Calgary, being a Calgary MLA. We saw local city councillors bring forward this amendment or voted, I guess, to repeal the law then ultimately. And I think, look, I mean, they were listening to their constituents who said that there is no reason to do this. This lacks common sense. You know, obviously it costs a lot of money. And of course, again, you know, we're rolling out our extended producer responsibility program. We're doing that with municipalities. We've shown we can work with municipalities. You know, I often use the co-op bag example of their compostable bags. And when we were, you know, fighting that aspect of the legislation, the mayor of Calgary was supportive, took the same position as we did, really, against the federal government on those bags and allowing those 100% not plastic, fully compostable bags to be used in Calgary. And so it was strange to see Calgary then go down this path that, again, kind of gets in the way of all the great things that we're trying to do. So it was just unnecessary. And you know, I give a lot of credit to those councillors who brought forward the voices of their constituents and really asked for some common sense decisions to be made. And ultimately, we saw them vote to repeal.
You bet. Boy, they are strange days. Never a dull moment on your file, that's for sure. Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, Rebecca Schulz, thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much, Bruce.
There continues to be a high demand for skilled tradespeople in Alberta, and 2 new hydrogen and ammonia processing plants have specifically increased the need for power engineers. Alberta's government is investing in post-secondary institutions across the province to increase learning spaces for those high-demand careers. The latest investment is $11.3 million, and that is for a new power engineering lab. It is at Northwestern Polytechnic. It will help prepare young Albertans for rewarding careers. As Advanced Education Minister Rajan Sawhney tells us, these type of investments across the province mean students can pursue post-secondary training closer to home.
I know that one very significant issue for people who live and work in our rural communities is access to education, programs, and facilities. When getting an education means a student has to move far away from home with considerable expense and living adjustments, it can weigh heavily on their decision as to whether they want to pursue that education or not. By providing modern learning spaces, not just here at Northwestern Polytech, but across the province, Alberta's government is offering more opportunities for students to pursue rewarding careers closer to home. That is most definitely a priority of the Government of Alberta.
Back in 2019, the Alberta government set a goal of cutting 1/3 of red tape to save Albertans and businesses time and a lot of money as well. Now, with almost 700 red tape reduction initiatives having been completed since 2019, the province is celebrating that achievement. Minister of Service Alberta and Red Tape Reduction, Nally, joining us now to talk more about it and tell us more about what has changed in Alberta. Minister, appreciate the time. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely happy to be here. It's a big week, Bruce. We're almost 5 years into this, and we finally get to say mission accomplished on red tape. We're not done. There's a lot more work to do, but we've achieved our goal of a 1/3 reduction. And in the course of doing so, we have cut over 200,000 pieces of red tape. When you think about it like that, wow, is that a lot of work? But you know, it was worth it, Bruce, because we saved Albertans and job creators $2.75 billion. And that's great news for Alberta.
Yeah, it's fabulous news. I mean, great work to you and your ministry. I want to ask you, you received an A, maybe it was an A+. It was definitely an A from the Canadian Federation of Federation of Independent Business.
And the highest mark in the country. I'm sorry to interrupt, Bruce. It's the highest mark in the country. I have to put that plug in.
Listen, you're a tough interview, but you've got a lot of good news to share. I don't blame you for wanting to jump in. Keep going. So you received an A. Listen, congrats on that. You're obviously incredibly proud, and you should be. What are some of the biggest red tape reduction initiatives that you undertook that we could communicate to Albertans?
You know, one of the big ones was the commingling of abandoned wells. This is something that industry has been asking for a long time, because when they go through the Alberta Energy Regulator to get approval, they can commingle their wells, but they can't when it comes to abandonment. So they're spending more time and more money. Again, a case of an unnecessary and burdensome red tape. So we allowed them to, through the work with the Alberta Energy Regulator, to commingle abandoned wells. And you know, Bruce, it seems like a simple thing, but it saved industry over $500 million. This is $500 million that we can spend, that we can reinvest back into Alberta and hire more Albertans. So it's a great news story and one of the big wins on the red tape front.
Look, you may have just touched on it, but I'll follow up a little bit, Minister. How has technology and innovation helped you with all of this?
Technology and innovation has played a key role in making all of this happen. You know, one very simple way is the Minister of Culture created an online grant portal, which again sounds very simple, but in the past you had to search through every ministry to find the grants. Now you can go to one portal and find all the grants for a nonprofit. And this is big news because it means nonprofits can spend less time searching for grants and more time benefiting from the grants. And then everybody wins. But can I just jump? I want to tell you another one as well. That's one of the big hits. And it's not always about money. Sometimes it's about doing the right thing. And we had one recently. You may have seen on the news the issue that we had in Edmonton with all of the encampments. And Minister Williams and Minister Nixon, they did a great job. And when when the authorities were bringing these encampments down, we had a conversation, and we said that it had to be it had to be compassionate, and it had to be solution focused. So they came up with a navigation center where they offer things like detox. They can also sign up for social programs, and they can do it right there from the navigation center. But Bruce, one of the biggest obstacles that people coming off the street encounter is they have no identification. After 5 or 10 years on the street, they don't have any ID, and you can't access social programs. You can't even get a prescription filled without identification. So the Premier's office challenged me to come up with a compassionate solution. So we cut some red tape. We came up with a process to come up to basically create identification for people that haven't had ID in years, because we have access to driver's licenses, to vital statistics, as well as information from the Hope Mission. So because of all of this, we were able to issue temporary identification certificates on site. And the great news is, a week later, they received their permanent ID at the Hope Mission. So this was great news and a big step forward. It really empowers people when they get ID for the first time in several years.
What an impact that had. I know we heard several stories, Minister. Listen, one more quick one on this, and then I want to jump to another topic. What's next? I mean, you've got some more work to do, I guess, but you're celebrating where you are. I'm sure you're looking ahead to what's next also.
Yeah, we said we're going to run a bit of a victory lap, but we're going to keep it short, and then we're going to focus on what's next, because here's what we don't want. We don't want the red tape to creep back into government. We spent too much time, we spent too much effort getting rid of it. We don't want it to come back. So I'll be bringing in legislation in the spring that is going to take the principles of red tape reduction, which is about creating a culture of red tape reduction, and we are going to be putting it in legislation so that ministers on an annual basis will be required to report out on the red tape count in their departments and how much red tape they've reduced. And so we're going to make it part of the culture of government in legislation. So this is going to help us as we move forward, and we keep an eye on being efficient and keeping lean and not allowing red tape to come back into Alberta.
Minister, we're a bit tight for time, but I've got to ask you about this. There's an issue with the AGLC and Albertans getting access to BC wines. It's a little bit complicated. It's complex. Could you explain it to us and what's happening?
Yeah, it's very simple, Bruce. We hear that there are wine producers that are complaining that they can't get into Alberta markets, and that's absolutely not true. We have an open and free market, and all wine producers in BC are able to sell into our market. Here's the challenge: some of them want to sell tax-free. And, we know that some of them might be struggling, but, we have producers in Alberta that are struggling, Bruce, and we don't allow them to access our markets tax-free. How can we allow BC producers to access the markets tax-free? So as long as they're willing to pay the appropriate markup, they can sell their wine on Alberta shelves.
All right. Thank you. Listen, we appreciate the time and the service. Great job to you and your team, and we'll talk to you again.
Thanks, Bruce.
There's Minister Dale Nally. Well, a growing number of Albertans have shown a preference for resolving legal issues outside of the traditional court system. This can be less stressful for those involved, it can be less expensive, and it can help to resolve issues faster than going through the court process, which we know can take a lot of time. So to give Albertans more options for resolving matters outside the courtroom, Justice Minister Mickey Amery announcing a new online grant to support innovative and community-based alternatives.
By working together, we can build a justice system that truly reflects the values of Albertans, ensuring fairness and accessibility to justice for all. By engaging community members in the decision-making process to address the root causes of crime, this new grant aims to build safer and stronger communities through community involvement, prevention programs, and alternative approaches to justice.
Minister Amery adding this new grant will support greater access to justice services for Albertans while also helping to reduce strain on the court system. And that does it for the Alberta Update this week. We always appreciate you sharing your time with us. Thank you for joining us as we take a look at what your government is up to, the issues that impact you the most. And our next show will be on the 29th of February, which is Budget Day in Alberta. I'm getting ahead of myself, actually. That's 2 shows from now, but we just want to mention that on the 29th we'll be bringing you a special show from Edmonton. Of course, when the budget is released, and we'll be there. We'll hear from the Premier and several ministers on their files. And as always, you can watch that when it is released at 7 p.m. on YouTube. You can view the Alberta Update on YouTube by going to your Alberta YouTube page or the Premier's at AB Danielle Smith. Make sure to subscribe by searching Your Alberta or AB Danielle Smith on YouTube. You just hit the subscribe button. It's just that easy. And that is it for our program this week. Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you next time.